You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today, for the final time this season, we make a pick for the 2023 USFL season as we decide the winner and who I think is going to win the 2023 USFL Championship. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to get into about this game. Make sure you comment down below and let me know who you think is going to win. Give me your reasons why. What do you think about what I broke down in my pick, score prediction, all that? Would love to discuss it with you all in that comment section, so make sure you do so before this video wraps up. But let's dive right into it. Again, the final pick of the 2023 season. This is a bittersweet feeling. I'm currently sitting at 25-17 following correctly predicting the actual championship game, with both games correct last week. So we have ourselves the Stallions and the Maulers facing off. USFL Championship, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This game's at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, Ohio. If you're looking to watch, it's going to be on NPC. Prime time football on a Saturday during a nice long holiday weekend. The Stallions come in red hot, just as hot as it seemed they were last season as well, in this very same position, demolishing their rival New Orleans Breakers on their way to the championship game. Then you have the the Maulers coming in off of a high-scoring overtime victory over the Michigan Panthers. And it was a game that I don't think anyone expected to be the way it was, with so much offense going on, and I would say a lot more allowed by the Pittsburgh defense than I would have expected to see. So a little bit of defensive concerns coming into this game based off what we saw the Michigan Panthers be able to do. But overall, a really exciting matchup between two teams. And this is a rematch, a game that happened back in week 4 where the Pittsburgh Maulers actually played the Stallions very, very close and were not too far off from winning and upsetting in that game, as the Stallions came away with a victory 24-20. So I don't think that this game is going to be quite a runaway. However, it's been quite a while since these two teams last faced off. We're looking at over basically 2 months now since that last game, and I think they're in vastly different places and positions with how they're set up and the way they're operating. So while that game did happen and we can look to it to make some comparisons, I don't really know how much it actually weighs in terms of importance comparing that game to this game this week that we have. But looking at the Stallions first, the defending champions, what do they have to do, and what am I looking for from them to come out victorious in this game? Well, you can start with a very first and obvious one here, and that is, of course, protecting Alex McGough against a front seven in Pittsburgh that has been very impressive this season so far. They're tied for 4th in the league with 23 sacks altogether, but the pressure they generate is also very aggressive as well. They're not afraid to come after the quarterback, and obviously they do find success bringing him down from time to time. Alex McGough, though, if you can at least give him time, he's typically good at finding his way out of the pocket if necessary and extending the plays anyway. So just give him enough time, and for the most part, you can kind of let him do the rest, because he has been a magician in the backfield all season long distributing that football. Second thing, and this might sound a little bit crazy because they were second in the league in passing yards allowed, but there were at points during the season where the Maulers' pass coverage was a little bit suspect at times, and we kind of saw it last week as well, with EJ Perry having only 1 week of play under his belt, come in and completely torch the Maulers for 370 yards through the air, but attacking a secondary that does have some weaknesses. Obviously, you want to be wary of Mark Gilbert. He can be an issue. He led the league in interceptions this year with 4 altogether, and he is an excellent corner on that Pittsburgh Maulers team. But there are holes and weaknesses that you can target and go after, and the Maulers are a team that I feel like they're prone to making like communication errors, where you just wind up with guys wide open in positions that they just downright shouldn't be. And it's not even necessarily like the talent level that's there. It's just that there are some communication things that I have seen from them overall this season, and we saw I think a fair amount of it last week as well during that game against the Panthers, that you can kind of expose that defense a bit. So if you can attack that secondary and find those miscues, and that's on the shoulders of Alex McGough, you have yourself a really good chance to have a very good game with such a very stout offense over there in Birmingham. And then the very last thing for them offensively, one thing that I think they need to continue to feed into, because it was clear last week he was looking to make a point, and that is continue to feed Davian Davis the football. Snubbed from the All-USFL team a couple of weeks ago, I predicted in last week's game that he was going to have himself a game where he wants to show everyone why he deserved to be on that list, and I don't think he left anyone questioning why he was so upset about it. Both of his touchdown catches were tremendous. He had 5 altogether on the day, and on top of that, he had 75 yards in those 5 receptions. You've got to just keep finding Davian Davis. Feed into that anger, that feeling that he has of disrespect by his peers or the league or whoever it is that decides the All-USFL team. But you need to feed into that because it is very, very clear from my point of view, and I'm sure from everyone else's, that Davian Davis now has a point to prove these last couple of weeks, and he started the revenge tour last week, and I think it continues again here in Canton this week as well. Get him the football and let him play angry like he did last week, and I think you'll benefit from it greatly on the offensive side of things. As for the defensive side, this first point here, very straightforward. He is the heart and soul of the Pittsburgh Maulers offense, and that is containing Troy Williams. If you can contain Troy Williams, you can contain this offense. They run a very tricky kind of, it's very much RPOs, read options, and you need to be aware of what Troy Williams is doing at all times because he is the bona fide heart and soul, I would argue, of this offense. If he doesn't go, they're going to find themselves in some trouble because the running game is not necessarily the greatest, and they do have some good receivers, Bailey Gaither being somebody who ended up with only 1 catch last week somehow during a playoff game, and then, of course, Isaiah Henney, who has really emerged during this season as a legit playmaking threat for them as well. But if you can contain Troy Williams, you can really slow down what this offense tries to do. The second thing on my list, and I just kind of mentioned him here, is limit Isaiah Henney. It was clear during last week's game he was a big focus point of the game plan, and he does a lot, not only just as a receiver, but within special teams as well as a return man, and I'm going to get to that point in a second here too, but you want to make sure you are aware of what Isaiah Henney is doing at all times, and you match up your best guys on him every single time as possible. Bailey Gaither is kind of like all reliable with the way he is just able to haul in incredible catches and do what he needs to do to get the football when you throw it to him. However, Isaiah Henney is that big play threat kind of guy that you want to make sure isn't tearing up your defense in the secondary and especially over the top. So make sure you know where he is at all times. You limit his production. I think you limit this offense's production altogether. And then thirdly, and this is more a special teams thing than it is defensively, but you are defending on special teams, so that's why I lumped it into this one here, because I think it is a very key thing to look at when you're discussing the Pittsburgh Maulers and why they've been successful this year and found themselves in the position that they are as the North representative in the championship. And that is going to be limiting what they do return-wise on special teams. You can say what you want about the coverage issues that the Pittsburgh Maulers have had pop up here or there during the season, but if there's one thing you can't deny, they are the best return team in the USFL, period. That is not up for debate. That is nothing but facts. And the reason I say that, because the Maulers were averaging 28 yards per kick return this season, which was second most in the USFL, but the big point I want to highlight here is what they were doing on punt returns this year. They averaged 16.5 yards per punt return this season, which was the most by 7 yards to the team that was behind them in second place. They are very good at getting the football, making a man or two miss, or just finding an opening within the return team's defense and being able to exploit it and set their offense up to at least find themselves in a manageable position to put some points on the board. So you need to play tight. You need to stick to your assignments and be aware of where that runner is at all times. Don't outkick your coverage if you're the punter. Make sure you are setting your special teams up for success. You need to be ready for this unit here because they can return the football and put the Maulers right at the 50-yard line and give them just half a field to go to try to get into the end zone, or maybe just kick a field goal at the very least. But play tight on special teams, make them have to drive. Make them have to sustain long, drawn-out drives where they have to go the distance. Don't give them 50 yards or 45 yards, or maybe 55 yards, depending on where they end up, to try and drive down to the field to get some points on the board. Don't make it easy for them. You want to make it difficult because this Maulers offense has shown some weaknesses. As for the other side, though, the Pittsburgh Maulers, the North team, How are they going to get the job done here, and how are they going to pull off the upset of the century for the USFL? Well, first and foremost, and I highlighted this during my recap of the game that they had last week, you must win and be more successful on third down. You look at last week's game against the Panthers, they were 3 of 14. It's like 20-something% conversion rate on third down. You are not going to beat the Birmingham Stallions if you are going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out the entire game with just a drive or two here or there that puts you in a position to score. You must sustain drives, make those tough completions, save your best plays for those third down situations. You need to make sure you're converting these drives, not only because you obviously want to get down the field and put points on the board, but secondly, you need to limit how much Alex McGough gets the football in his hands. If you can win the time of possession game and force the Stallions to have, instead of, let's say, 8 drives throughout the game offensively, and they only end up with 7 or 6, something like that, you're limiting the opportunity for them to put points on the board, which they have clearly shown they have no trouble doing if they start getting rolling and taking advantage of your defense. So converting on third down, that is a must for this Maulers team, who has not necessarily been great at that all season long. Second thing, touchdowns, not field goals. Kind of to discuss this in the way I've been discussing the Maulers so far about their offense. I've been talking about being put into scoring position, and that's because they don't necessarily score touchdowns as often as you'd like this team to see. But if you are able to overcome your inability to finish drives, you have a shot at winning this game. When you look back at the time that they played back in week 4 against the Stallions, they had 4 field goals attempted and 4 field goals made in that matchup. If even one of those field goals had been a touchdown, you're talking about a 1-point game at that point, or excuse me, that's a tie game at that point. Excuse me, math is hard. And you have yourself a completely different ball game when that clock hits 0. You're looking at overtime and a real shot to pull off an upset. But they have 29 field goals attempted this season, which is tied for most in the USFL with the Philadelphia Stars. You need to get touchdowns. You are not going to beat the Stallions team kicking field goals. I just do not see that happening. And then lastly, be aggressive when you get inside that 40-yard line. I know I talked about, being able to convert on third down and extending drives. Well, if you're inside the 40, at that point, when you consider the way kick returns and punt returns are somewhat handled in the USFL, I would say starting field position is a lot closer than you'd see in other football leagues like the USFL or the NFL or the NCAA. Typically, teams are starting closer, I feel like, to the 30-yard line, to the 35-yard line anyways. Don't be afraid to go for it on fourth down, especially with your struggles on third down. If you find yourself in 4th and 2 and you are sitting at the 40-yard line or the 39-yard line, like I said, don't just settle for the field goal. Be aggressive, because you are not beating this Stallions team with just field goals. You need to get into the end zone. Save your best play calls for third down. And if you have something in your back pocket you haven't been using and you find yourself at a 4th and 1, 4th and 2 situation and you want to get some points on the board, whether it's early or it's late, I don't think that there is a position in this game here where the Maulers can say, oh, it's too early to start going on 4th down. No, not against the Stallions. With the way they put up points, especially how hot they've been recently on the offense, you have absolutely no reason to not go for it. Everything is on the line. Show every card you have. Do not hold anything back and be aggressive. On the defensive side of things, it's obviously a tall task and one thing that a lot of teams have not done well, but is something that the Maulers did defensively fairly well in their Week 4 matchup, and that is limiting Alex McGough and keeping him inside the pocket as much as possible. When you look back at the stat line for week number 4, when these two teams faced off, you're looking at a game where Alex McGough actually probably had one of his worst games of the season, if not his worst game of the season, surprisingly. Passing-wise, he was 17 of 29. He only had 157 yards with a touchdown pass and 2 interceptions. And then rushing-wise, he had only 10 carries for 48 yards and a touchdown. Those numbers, while not great, are definitely not terrible, but when you think of what Alex McGough has done this season, definitely not what we're used to seeing from him, especially in the back half of the year. So if you can limit Alex McGough and hold him to a stat line similar to that, where he's only accredited for 2 touchdowns and you have to force them to score some other way, you have yourself a real chance here. Secondly, how are you going to slow down what they're doing here? I say lock up the middle of the defense. Your goal as a defense should be to limit what they can do directly within inside the numbers. Don't let them have the easy throws. Force Alex Magoo to either have to take the ball outside the pocket and make a play to the outside towards the sideline and make those throws that are near the numbers as opposed to something that's just easy right over the middle, whether it's a dump down to the running back or to Jay Sternberger over the middle. I think if you can at least, try to, if you put Alex Magoo in a situation where you're taking away easier throws and forcing more difficult throws, you have an opportunity, like I said, with Mark Gilbert being outside and, a secondary that has not been bad by any means. Don't get me wrong. And again, they finished second in passing yards allowed this season, so they've been pretty good, but they have had games here or there where they've been suspect at times. And I don't know if they're quite as good as the numbers would reveal. I kind of feel like because they played in the North Division, their passing numbers look a little bit better than they would had they been a team in the South. But that's obviously all hypotheticals. However, if you lock up the middle of the field, force Alex Magoo to make those more difficult throws towards the numbers, I think you can at least limit what this offense wants to do, and you make things a little bit easier for yourself defensively. And then last but certainly not least, a guy that I feel like I've been talking about the final month and a half or so of the USFL season, neutralizing CJ Marable and the running back room altogether. And they did a pretty solid job the last time these two teams played. If you look at what they did back in week 4, they only allowed 3-point yards per attempt, which isn't bad, but it is also not great. You're still looking at somewhere, I believe, around a first down every 3 carries or so if you want to go with the math like that. It's obviously not cut and dry like that, but if you want to go with the numbers that way. However, if you can limit what CJ Marable, who has been doing, which again, this goes into defending over the middle, how well he's been able to catch out of the backfield, whether it's just he's sneaking through the offensive and defensive lines to just get a quick dump off or something like that, and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield or just running between the tackles, doing what he does best. If you can neutralize him in the running back room, you can put them, again, in a situation, and that all kind of boils into controlling the middle of the field. So if you could control the middle of the football field and force the Stallions to have to make spectacular play after spectacular play against you, you have a shot. You've already shown it once that you can play this team well, but the question now is, can you do it again and this time be on the other end with a W instead of a loss in a tight affair? Now, as for who I think is going to come out victorious in this matchup here, it was kind of hard for me to decide, but ultimately I think I'm going to go with, and I really wish, the Breakers fan in me wants to just root for the Maulers, and the Maulers are my adopted home team of the North. However, I think I'm going to have to look at the Birmingham Stallions for the victory in this one here. I just have a hard time picking against them. I think that they are the de facto best team in the USFL right now, and for me to go against them and doubt them just kind of goes against what I believe in with the way this team has looked through the entirety of the season. I really feel like the championship game was kind of won last week within the South Division, just with how much better that division was altogether. But I do believe that it's going to be another tighter affair. And I have this game sitting at a score of 30-20. I just think that the issues with settling for field goals and not being able to punch it in for scores and getting 6 points on the board is going to be what ends up holding up this Maulers team. It's going to be close, though, because they have a great defense and they've already shown that they can slow down the Stallions team once before. I will be very curious, though, to see if they're able to stop the Stallions team as effectively this time around, where I think the Stallions are far hotter than they were that first time around that they met, and I just don't know if anyone can stop that Birmingham freight train. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. That is my final pick for the 2023 USFL season. I can't believe we're here. It's been an absolute blast these last couple of months, almost 3 months now since we're heading into July. I want to hear your thoughts, your opinions. Fire away in that comment section down below, but I appreciate it if you made it all the way to the end of the video. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.